A young woman, once a trusted middle school teacher, stands in court, her life about to change forever. 25-year-old Alexandria Vera turns to hug her family one last time before deputies lead her away. Her sentence, 10 years in prison. Her crime, a relationship that crossed every boundary a teacher should never break. 4 months she lived a double life, respected by colleagues, adored by students, and hiding a secret that would soon make national headlines. The courtroom is silent as Judge Michael McSpadden delivers the ruling. He tells her, normally in cases like this the punishment is much harsher, sometimes even 3 life sentences. But this time the outcome was different. Vera's defense calls only one witness, a clinical psychologist. She paints a picture of a woman shaped by chaos, a childhood surrounded by domestic violence, and years of unhealthy relationships that blurred her judgment. The psychologist insists that Vera is not beyond help, that therapy could change her path. But the report also reveals another truth. Vera had a long history of deception. Judge McSpadden addresses the growing pattern of teacher-student affairs across the country. He says it's becoming alarmingly frequent, and vows to take action to speak directly in schools about prevention and awareness. Then comes a surprising twist. Both families, Vera's and the victims, wrote letters to the court. They claimed the relationship was mutually accepted, even calling it culturally okay. The judge noted that the boy's mother seemed more worried about Vera losing her job than about the crime itself. Court documents uncovered months of repeated abuse, from September 2015 through January 2016. At one point Vera became pregnant. But before the public found out, she quietly had an abortion. As deputies take her away, Judge McSpadden says something few expected. He believes Alexandria Vera truly regrets what she's done. But remorse, he explains, does not erase responsibility. He tells the court that a message must be sent, one that warns every teacher, every parent, and every student watching. 10 years behind bars. Possibility of parole in 5. A young teacher once trusted with shaping minds, now a cautionary tale in the education system. And as she disappears behind the courthouse doors, one question still lingers. How did a woman with everything to lose cross a line that no one should ever cross? Before that courtroom moment, before the handcuffs and headlines, Alexandria Vera was simply known as Ms. Vera, a friendly English teacher at Stovall Middle School in Aldine, Texas. By all accounts, she was well liked. She dressed sharply, smiled often, and students said she was one of the cool teachers, the kind who didn't just teach lessons but listened. No one imagined she was keeping a secret that would shock an entire community. It started in the fall of 2015. In her 8th grade class sat a 13-year-old boy, quiet, polite, and eager to learn. He wasn't just another student to Vera. Soon their connection began to cross classroom boundaries. Conversations after school turned personal. What began as extra help with assignments slowly turned into late-night phone calls. Soon those calls led to visits. And by September the relationship had already gone too far. Friends of Vera later said she spoke of him like a boyfriend. They went out together, met each other's families, and even attended gatherings where people assumed they were a couple. According to court records, the boy's family accepted the relationship, and that only made things more complicated. When Vera became pregnant, she didn't hide it. She proudly told co-workers and students that she was expecting. Some say she even introduced the boy as her partner outside school. It was a picture of normalcy, until someone reported it. The investigation began quietly. School officials received an anonymous tip and contacted Child Protective Services. Detectives soon gathered evidence, text messages, photos, and witness statements. Each discovery confirmed what many didn't want to believe, that a trusted teacher had crossed every line of ethics and law. When Vera learned that investigators were closing in, she vanished. For weeks she couldn't be found. Her home was empty, her phone disconnected. Authorities later revealed she fled to live with relatives, hoping to avoid arrest. But the story had already spread nationwide. When she finally turned herself in, the image of Ms. Vera, the caring teacher, was gone. In its place stood a woman facing charges that carried a possible life sentence. The community was torn. Some said she was a victim of her own poor judgment. Others said she knew exactly what she was doing. Parents questioned how something so serious could happen in a school setting. Teachers across Texas were forced to look closer at their own boundaries with students. Prosecutors described months of abuse hidden under the label of love. They said Vera had manipulated the situation, knowing her position of authority. The defense argued that she didn't prey on the student, that she truly believed they were in love, a statement that only added to the outrage. Every revelation pulled the story deeper into the public eye. And as reporters gathered outside the courthouse, one question echoed through every headline. Was this a story of misplaced affection, or the calculated choices of an adult who should have known better? By the time Alexandria Vera stood trial, the world already knew her name. News outlets replayed her photos side by side, one showing a smiling teacher in the classroom, the other her booking photo. To many, she had become a symbol of how easily trust can be broken. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was tense. Reporters filled every seat, parents whispered in the gallery, and the prosecution prepared to show what they called a clear abuse of authority. The evidence was direct: text messages that hinted at affection, social media posts showing the two together, and testimony that detailed how the relationship developed over months. It wasn't a one-time mistake, it was a pattern. Prosecutors spoke firmly. They said Vera had used her position to build emotional control, that she blurred the line between teacher and companion until it no longer existed. They reminded the jury that the boy was 13, a child who could not legally consent to anything that happened. The defense painted a very different picture. They described Vera as a woman who grew up surrounded by chaos, searching for acceptance in the wrong places. Her attorney said she never forced the boy, that the relationship was emotional first, and that she genuinely believed she was in love. But love, the judge reminded the court, cannot excuse a crime. The psychologist who took the stand didn't deny Vera's struggles. She explained that Vera's past included broken homes and volatile relationships, that she often sought affection without understanding the consequences. But even with those explanations, the facts remained unchanged. The judge listened carefully before speaking. He said he'd seen too many cases like this, teachers crossing lines that should never be crossed. He said Vera's story had to stand as an example, not an exception. As the final verdict was read, Vera stood still. Her family cried quietly. The sentence was clear: 10 years in prison with a chance of parole after 5. Outside the courthouse, opinions were divided. Some said the sentence was too harsh, that she didn't deserve a decade behind bars. Others said it was far too light, that a teacher's betrayal carries a lifelong impact no sentence can erase. Across Texas, schools began revisiting policies. Administrators spoke openly about professional boundaries, digital communication, and warning signs. For parents, the case became a wake-up call, a reminder that sometimes danger doesn't come from strangers, but from those they trust most. In the months that followed, Vera's name faded from headlines. She began serving her sentence quietly, away from the cameras that once followed her every move. Her classroom sat empty, her students moved on, and a community tried to make sense of what had happened. But the story never fully disappeared. Even years later, it remains one of the most discussed teacher-student cases in Texas, a story that forced an entire district to face uncomfortable truths. And for every person who watched that courtroom scene, for every parent, teacher, and student, the message was unmistakable. Trust, once broken, can never be fully repaired. Behind the gray walls of the state correctional facility, Alexandria Vera began a new life, one without classrooms, students, or freedom. Once known for her bright smile and confident walk, she now moved through quiet corridors under constant watch. Her sentence, 10 years. Her chance at release, 5 if she showed good behavior. At first, life inside was difficult. Vera kept to herself, often reading or writing letters to her family. Inmates who recognized her from the news sometimes whispered as she passed by, curious how a teacher's life had unraveled so completely. For Vera, each day was a reminder of choices that could never be undone. Reports from within the facility suggested she followed every rule, enrolled in counseling, and took part in education programs designed for rehabilitation. Those who met her said she carried guilt more heavily than anger, that she knew exactly why she was there. But outside the prison, her story continued to spark debate. Across Texas, school districts tightened codes of conduct. Teachers were warned about personal communication with students, and training sessions became mandatory in many schools. Administrators pointed to Vera's case as proof that one mistake could destroy careers, reputations, and families. Meanwhile, Vera's former students grew older. Some spoke years later, saying they had struggled to understand how the person who once guided them could have made such a decision. Others said they felt compassion, believing that she had simply lost control of her judgment. When Vera became eligible for parole, her case resurfaced in local headlines. Questions arose: had she changed? Was she ready to rejoin society? Supporters said she had paid her debt, that she deserved a second chance. Critics disagreed, saying the damage her actions caused could never be undone. The parole board reviewed her record carefully. Her behavior in prison was good, her reports positive, and she expressed genuine remorse for the harm she caused. But parole is never guaranteed. The decision would depend not only on conduct, but on whether the board believed she could truly return to society without repeating her past mistakes. Years passed quietly. By then, the world had moved on to new stories, new scandals, new headlines. But for many who remembered the case, her name still carried a lesson. One about the fine line between care and control, and the consequences that follow when that line is crossed. As of now, Alexandria Vera's story stands as a chapter in Texas criminal history, one that teachers, parents, and administrators continue to cite when talking about boundaries in education. Her case raised hard questions about accountability, forgiveness, and how society treats those who fall from trusted positions. The truth is there were no winners. A young boy lost a childhood. A teacher lost her freedom. And a community lost the trust that once held it together. When we look back at what happened, we're left with a single reminder that every action, no matter how small it seems at the start, carries weight. A decision made in secret can change everything. And sometimes the hardest lessons aren't taught in classrooms. They're learned in courtrooms. In the end, the story of Alexandria Vera isn't just about a teacher and a student. It's about how one decision can destroy trust, futures, and reputations in a single moment. It reminds us that authority carries responsibility, and once that's lost, the consequences last far beyond the sentence itself. If you've watched until now, thank you for staying with this story. Every case like this deserves reflection, not just judgment. And if you'd like to see more real-life courtroom stories just like this one, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring you more powerful stories that uncover the truth behind the headlines.